As a surgical intern, I learned that my index finger is 7 centimeters long. While working at the VA during my intern year, I was called down to the ER to evaluate a patient. The only thing the ER doctor told me was that a guy had abdominal pain. When I got to the ER, he looked really uncomfortable, so I introduced myself and started to ask the typical questions that we're taught to ask of any patient. How long has the pain been present? Was there an inciting incident? Can you rate the pain on a scale of 0 to 10? What makes the pain better? What makes the pain worse? Have you tried taking anything for the pain? He stared sheepishly at me, and then he finally replied, well, it's not true abdominal pain, it's more rectal pain. He said that he and his girlfriend were incorporating toys into their sex play, and something went in too far. Now, let me just stop here to say there was no one else in the room with him. He was completely alone. Had this happened to me, I would have made sure that other person came to the ER with me to be a witness, and at least for moral support. But there was no one there, so it made me question whether he was being completely honest about how he got into this predicament. Now, I didn't know how to proceed because this was the first, but it wouldn't be the last, time that I encountered a foreign object in the rectum, or the vagina, or any other orifice, but it was usually the rectum. I didn't want to make him any more uncomfortable than he already was, so I didn't ask any more questions. And I just went to my physical exam. I listened to his heart and his lungs, then I listened to his abdomen. There was this faint buzzing. No, it was a vibrating sound. And I said, well, it's still on. To which he replied, yes, it is. I told him that I needed to perform a rectal exam to see if I could remove the foreign object. He rolled over in the bed on his side. I put on some gloves and some lube, because I'm a caring doctor. And I performed a rectal exam. I could feel just the tip of the foreign body, but I couldn't remove it. I snapped off my gloves, told him that I needed to talk to my attending, and I'd be back. I went upstairs, I told my upper level and my attending about our ER consult, and we went down there as a team to reevaluate the patient. My attending performed a second rectal exam, but he was unsuccessful in removing the foreign object as well. So we consented the patient to go to the operating room for a procedure called an exam under anesthesia. By the time we got to the operating room, the batteries in the vibrator had died. There was no more buzzing sound, no vibration. Several of the doctors tried to remove the foreign object with their fingers, but they were unsuccessful. Then we tried using several different instruments to grab the tip of it to bring it out, but all we did was proceed to push it further in. My attending was well over 6 foot, and as you can see, I'm barely 5 foot. He asked everybody in the OR to raise their hands up in the air. He started looking at all the hands in the air. You see where this is going. He looked at all the hands in the air, and when he looked at me, he smiled and said, well, Romero has the smallest hands. He said it like it was an accomplishment or a prize, but I knew what he meant. So as the winner, I double-gloved and proceeded to fist the gentleman in order to retrieve the foreign object. Luckily for him and me, I was successful in my first attempt. Now, per hospital policy, anytime a foreign object is removed from a patient, it has to go to pathology for further evaluation. It was clearly a vibrator. The batteries had died, but it's still a vibrator. But I guess they wanted to verify that information. The next morning, when I went to round on the patient in his very private 4-person room at the VA, with thin curtains as dividers, I asked him how he was feeling. And he said, I'm really, really sore. To which I replied, well, just be glad that I'm the one that removed the foreign object, and not my 6-foot-tall attending that you met in the ER as I showed him the size of my hand. He kind of ducked his head and smiled and thanked me for my candor. I gave him discharge instructions as well as a follow-up visit, which he did not show up for, which wasn't surprising. And for accurate reporting, because again, I'm a caring doctor, I measured my index finger to document how far the foreign object was in his rectum prior to removal. And that is how I learned that my index finger is 7 centimeters long. Thank you.